Tom was a young man who loved hiking. Every weekend he would pack his bag with water, snacks, and a small first aid kit, and head out into the forest near his town. The forest was quiet and peaceful. Birds sang in the trees and sunlight filtered through the leaves in golden beams. Tom enjoyed being surrounded by nature. It made him feel free and calm. On this particular morning, Tom woke up early. The sun was just rising and the air was crisp and fresh. He put on his sturdy boots, grabbed his backpack, and set off toward the deeper part of the forest. This area was less known to hikers. Few people went there because the paths were narrow and winding. Tom liked the idea of discovering something new. As he walked, he noticed the usual signs of the forest. Small rabbits ran through the undergrowth. Squirrels jumped from branch to branch carrying nuts in their mouths. The sound of a small stream reached his ears. He followed it for a while, listening to the water flow over the rocks. It was peaceful, almost magical. After walking for about an hour, Tom noticed something unusual. At first, he thought it was a tree stump, but as he got closer, he realized it was something much stranger. Hidden among the trees and covered with leaves, moss, and vines was an old police car. Its paint was faded and scratched, and the tires were half buried in the ground. Tom stopped in his tracks. He had never seen a car here before, and certainly not one like this. He carefully approached the car. The windows were dirty and the inside was dark, but one window was slightly open. Tom crouched down and looked inside. He could see a small box lying on the seat, but he could not tell what it was. The air around the car smelled of wet leaves and soil. The place was very quiet. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. Tom wondered how the car had ended up in the forest. It did not look like it had been there for just a few days. The rust on the doors and the moss growing on the tires suggested it had been abandoned for years. He thought about calling someone to report it, but something inside him told him to explore first. Curiosity was stronger than caution. He circled the car slowly, looking for a way to open the doors. The driver's side door was slightly ajar. He pushed it gently and it creaked as it opened. Inside, the car smelled old and musty. Dust covered every surface and papers were scattered on the seats. A small notebook lay on the floor near the pedals. Tom picked up the notebook carefully. It had a name written on the cover, Officer Lee. The cover was worn and the pages were yellowed, but the writing inside was still clear. Tom opened it and began to read. The first entries were normal. They described daily patrols, minor accidents, and notes about the town. But as Tom read further, he noticed something strange. Officer Lee wrote about mysterious events in the forest. There were notes about strange sounds at night, lights moving between the trees, and people who seemed to disappear for hours without explanation. Tom felt a chill run through his body. He had always thought the forest was quiet and safe. Now reading these words, he realized there was more to this place than he had known. He read about a few hikers who had gotten lost for a day and returned without remembering how they got back. The officer had written that he had seen some unusual tracks in the dirt, tracks that did not look like any animal he knew. Tom turned the pages quickly. There were drawings of shapes, strange symbols, and maps with areas of the forest marked in red ink. The last entry was dated 5 years ago. It was short, and it said simply that Officer Lee had decided to leave the area and never return because of the strange happenings. Tom put the notebook into his backpack. He felt a mixture of excitement and fear. He had stumbled upon a real mystery, something that no one in his town had talked about. He decided to explore a little more carefully. As he stepped back from the car, he noticed the forest had become unusually quiet. The birds had stopped singing and the wind no longer rustled the leaves. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of his eyes, but when he looked directly, nothing was there. He shook his head, trying to stay calm. Maybe he was imagining things. Tom continued walking along the path, holding his backpack tightly. He thought about the diary and the stories it told. Why had Officer Lee left the forest so suddenly? What exactly had happened to the people mentioned in the notebook? He wanted answers, but he also knew he had to be careful. After walking for a while, Tom reached a clearing. The sunlight poured in and he could see the forest stretching in every direction. It was beautiful and peaceful again. He sat down on a fallen log and took out a water bottle. As he drank, he looked at the notebook again. He decided to make notes about what he read. If he was going to investigate, he needed a plan. Tom spent some time thinking. He decided that he would return to the car later with some supplies. He wanted to search it more carefully and see if there were other clues inside. For now, he needed to understand the forest and the areas mentioned in the notebook. He walked slowly back toward the main trail, keeping his eyes open for anything unusual. The forest seemed normal again, but Tom could not shake the feeling that something was watching him. He imagined shadows moving behind trees, strange noises in the distance, and eyes staring at him from the bushes. Every time he heard a sound, he stopped and looked around. But there was nothing. By midday, Tom reached a small stream. He decided to rest and eat a snack. As he sat on a rock, he noticed footprints near the water. They were small and looked human, but they did not match any shoe prints he knew. Tom's curiosity grew even more. He took a picture of the footprints with his phone. Maybe later he could compare them to other tracks in the forest. After eating, Tom continued walking. He tried to stay on the trails marked in the notebook. The diary mentioned a few landmarks like an old oak tree with a hollow trunk and a rock shaped like a bear. Tom wanted to find these places. He felt like he was following a hidden map left by Officer Lee. By late afternoon, Tom reached a part of the forest he had never seen before. The trees were taller and the path was narrower. Strange sounds echoed in the distance. They were soft at first, like whispers, and then louder, like the wind moving through metal. Tom's heart beat faster. He reminded himself to stay calm and focus on what he could see. Suddenly, he noticed something shiny between the trees. He walked closer and found an old key lying on the ground. It looked like it had been there for a long time, but it was clean and intact. Tom picked it up. He wondered if it belonged to the police car. Maybe it could unlock something inside. As the sun began to set, Tom realized he needed to head back before it got too dark. He marked the place on his phone so he could return the next day. With the notebook and key safely in his backpack, he carefully walked back toward the main trail. Tom felt a mixture of fear and excitement. He had discovered something unusual, and he knew this was only the beginning. The forest held secrets that no one in his town had ever shared. He could feel it in the air, in the quiet, and in the strange notebook he carried. That night, back at home, Tom placed the notebook on his desk and studied it by the light of his lamp. The more he read, the more he realized how much he did not know. There were clues, maps, and notes, but the full story was missing. He knew he had to return to the forest. He had to uncover the truth about the old police car and the mysteries it hid. Tom went to bed with the notebook beside him. He could not stop thinking about the forest, the diary, and the strange footprints. He knew that the next day would be different. He would continue exploring, and whatever he found inside the old police car could change everything. The next morning, Tom woke up early. The sun was barely rising, and a gentle breeze moved through his open window. He felt excitement and nervousness at the same time. Today he was going back to the forest. He wanted to find out more about the old police car and the secrets it held. After a quick breakfast, Tom packed his bag carefully. He brought the notebook, the key he had found yesterday, a flashlight, a water bottle, and some snacks. He also took a small rope, thinking it might be useful. He double-checked everything before leaving. Today he would explore deeper than before. The forest was calm as Tom entered. The early morning sunlight created patterns on the ground as it passed through the leaves. Birds were singing again, and the sound of the stream in the distance made everything feel peaceful. But Tom could not forget the notebook. Every page he had read yesterday had filled him with questions. He walked along the trail he had marked on his phone. It was narrow and overgrown in some places. He pushed aside branches carefully and stepped over fallen logs. The forest seemed alive in a different way this morning. He felt that the trees were watching him, and that every sound might be important. After about an hour, Tom reached the clearing where the old police car was hidden. The car looked the same as yesterday, covered in moss and leaves, but the early sunlight made it look almost golden. Tom approached slowly, his heart beating faster. He checked the doors. The driver's door was still slightly open, as if waiting for him. Tom took a deep breath and stepped inside. The smell of dust and old leather filled his nose. He placed his bag on the passenger seat and pulled out the notebook. He thought carefully about where to start. The car was small, but it seemed like it held more clues than he had seen before. He remembered the key he had found yesterday. He tried it on the glove compartment. The lock clicked open. Inside, he found a small box wrapped in a cloth. Tom carefully opened the cloth. Inside, there were several objects: a small camera, a few envelopes, and a flash drive. He realized that this car had once been part of important work. Tom looked at the envelopes. They were addressed to Officer Lee, and each had a date written on it. He opened the first one. Inside was a photograph of the forest taken at night. The photo showed something strange, a faint light hovering above the trees. Tom's hands trembled slightly. Could this be what Officer Lee had written about in the notebook? He put the photograph aside and looked at the next envelope. Inside, there were several handwritten letters. The letters talked about strange events in the forest. People had reported hearing whispers and seeing shadows that moved without explanation. Tom read each letter carefully. The stories were mysterious, but none of them explained why the police car had ended up here. Tom picked up the camera. It was small but seemed functional. He pressed the power button and the screen lit up. The camera had several images stored inside. Most were photographs of the forest, but some showed unusual things. There was a picture of a tree with strange markings on the bark, and another of a small figure standing in the distance. The figure was blurred, but it looked like a child wearing an old-fashioned uniform. Tom felt both curious and uneasy. The forest had always seemed safe to him, but these images told a different story. He knew that Officer Lee had discovered something important. He wanted to understand what it was. Next, Tom examined the flash drive. He did not have a computer with him, so he decided to wait until he returned home. The drive could hold even more clues. Perhaps there were videos or reports that could explain the mysteries. Tom carefully put the flash drive into his pocket. He leaned back in the seat and thought about everything he had found. The police car, the notebook, the key, the letters, the camera, and the flash drive. All these items were connected. They told a story, but the story was incomplete. Tom wanted to know the truth. Suddenly, he heard a sound outside the car. It was soft, like footsteps on leaves. He froze and listened carefully. The forest was quiet again, except for the distant sound of the stream. The footsteps stopped. Tom wondered if it was an animal or something else. He stepped out of the car slowly, looking around. Nothing moved. The forest seemed normal, but Tom could not shake the feeling that he was being observed. He reminded himself to stay calm and focus on his mission. He needed to explore the area near the car and see if there were any other clues. He walked around the clearing and noticed something he had not seen yesterday. Near the back of the car, there was a small trail leading deeper into the forest. It was narrow and overgrown, almost hidden by fallen branches. Tom felt a spark of excitement. Perhaps this path would lead to the answers he was looking for. He followed the trail carefully. The trees grew closer together, and the sunlight became dimmer. Strange sounds echoed through the forest. Tom's heart raced, but he kept moving forward. He reminded himself that he was safe, and that he needed to stay focused. After a few minutes, the trail opened into a small clearing. In the center, there was a large stone with symbols carved into it. Tom approached slowly. The symbols were intricate and looked very old. He took out his notebook and began copying them carefully. He wanted to remember every detail. As he studied the stone, he noticed marks on the ground. They looked like footprints, but they were not human. The shapes were unusual, almost like an animal that walked on two legs. Tom took a picture of the footprints and tried to follow them. The tracks led deeper into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. Tom felt a mix of fear and curiosity. He knew he could not follow the tracks too far today, but he wanted to learn more. He decided to mark the location on his phone so he could return later with better equipment. He also realized that the notebook and items from the car were more important than ever. They might hold the key to understanding the strange symbols and tracks. Before leaving, Tom took one last look at the stone. Something about it felt alive, as if it had a story to tell. He felt a strange connection, as though the forest itself wanted him to uncover its secrets. With a deep breath, he turned back toward the police car. The walk back was slower. Tom's mind was full of questions. Who had placed the stone here? What did the symbols mean? Why had Officer Lee left the car in this part of the forest? Each question seemed to lead to another. He realized that the forest was much more mysterious than he had ever imagined. When he reached the car, Tom carefully placed the notebook, the letters, the camera, and the flash drive back inside. He felt that the car was a guardian of secrets waiting for someone to discover them. He locked the driver's door and marked the location on his phone. As he walked back to the main trail, the sun was beginning to set. The forest glowed in warm colors and shadows stretched across the ground. Tom felt a sense of accomplishment. He had found important clues and he had started to uncover the mysteries of the forest. But he also knew that this was only the beginning. Back at home, Tom spread out all the items on his desk. He looked at the photographs, the letters, and the notebook. He plugged in the flash drive and waited for his computer to recognize it. Files appeared on the screen, more photographs, videos, and text documents. Tom felt a thrill of excitement. He opened one video. It showed the forest at night, with faint lights moving between the trees. A figure appeared briefly, standing very still, almost watching the camera. Tom paused the video and stared at the screen. It was the same feeling he had in the forest, like someone or something was observing him. Tom took notes on everything he had found. He knew he needed a plan. The forest had secrets and he wanted to uncover all of them, but he also understood that he had to be careful. The answers were here, hidden among the trees, the car, and the mysterious items left by Officer Lee. That night, Tom went to bed with a sense of purpose. He dreamed of the forest, the stone with symbols, and the strange figure in the video. He knew that the next day would bring new discoveries. Whatever he found in the forest, he was ready. He felt that he was on the edge of a great adventure, one that could change everything he thought he knew about the woods near his town. The next morning, Tom could hardly wait to return to the forest. He had spent the night thinking about the items he found in the old police car. The notebook, the letters, the camera, and the flash drive all seemed to point to something mysterious hidden deep in the woods. Today he decided he would go further than ever before. He packed his bag carefully. He included a flashlight, a small first aid kit, extra water, and a few snacks. He also brought a notebook of his own to write down observations. He wanted to record everything carefully. Tom felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The forest seemed different when he imagined what secrets it might hold. As he walked through the familiar paths, he noticed the sunlight dancing through the leaves in the morning breeze. Birds chirped and the air smelled fresh and earthy. The forest seemed peaceful, but Tom could not shake the memory of the strange footprints and the glowing lights in the photographs from Officer Lee's files. After an hour of walking, he reached the clearing where the old police car was hidden. The car seemed to wait for him, covered in moss and leaves as before. Tom walked slowly around it. Everything looked the same as yesterday, yet he knew that today he would see more. He unlocked the driver's door and carefully placed his bag inside. He took out the notebook and looked at the key he had found. He decided to try the key on the small lockbox in the trunk. The trunk was heavy with rust, but with a bit of effort it opened. Inside there was another notebook smaller than the first and a small metal case. Tom opened the notebook first. The pages were old and yellowed, and the handwriting was different from Officer Lee's. The notebook belonged to another officer, named Officer Paul. The entries were short and cryptic. They talked about unusual patterns in the forest, strange symbols on trees, and lights that appeared at night. One entry mentioned a hidden clearing where unusual things were observed. Tom's heart raced. Could this be the same clearing with the carved stone he had seen yesterday? Next, Tom opened the metal case. Inside, he found several small objects: a compass, a magnifying glass, and a few small vials with colored liquid inside. The liquid seemed harmless, but they shimmered in the sunlight in a strange way. Tom carefully placed everything back in the case. He felt that these objects were part of a larger puzzle, left for someone to find. Tom decided to follow the trail leading deeper into the forest. He remembered the footprints near the stone. They had disappeared into the shadows, and he hoped to find them again. As he walked, he noticed small signs he had missed before: broken branches, faint markings on tree trunks, and patches of moss that seemed to be disturbed. After some time, Tom reached the clearing with the carved stone. The symbols on the stone looked even more intriguing in the morning light. Tom studied them carefully and compared them with the drawings in the notebooks. Some symbols matched, while others were new. He copied them into his own notebook, careful to remember every detail. Suddenly, he heard a soft rustling sound behind him. He turned quickly but saw nothing. The forest was quiet except for the distant sound of a stream. Tom reminded himself to stay calm. He had been alone in the forest before, and he knew that small animals could make strange sounds. Still, he felt a shiver of anticipation. Tom examined the footprints again. They led to a narrow path he had not noticed before. The path was overgrown, almost hidden by bushes and fallen leaves. He decided to follow it. The deeper he went, the darker the forest became. The sunlight barely reached the ground through the thick canopy of trees. As he walked, he noticed small glimmers of light between the trees. They were faint and moved slightly, like reflections or fireflies. Tom stopped and watched carefully. The lights seemed to guide him toward a part of the forest he had never seen. He felt a mixture of wonder and curiosity. After a few minutes, he reached a small clearing. In the center, there was a shallow pond. The water was clear and the sunlight reflected off it in a beautiful pattern. Around the pond were more symbols carved into stones and trees. Tom realized that this place was special. It had been used for something important long ago, and the officers had discovered it. He walked carefully around the pond, examining the symbols. Some were similar to those in the notebooks, while others were entirely new. He took pictures and made sketches in his notebook. The forest seemed to hold a story, and each symbol was a piece of the puzzle. Tom noticed movement in the water. Small fish swam near the surface, but there was something unusual. Tiny ripples appeared as if something had moved just beneath the water. Tom leaned closer, curious. Suddenly, a small object floated to the surface. It was a wooden box, small and sealed. Tom picked it up carefully. The box was light but felt sturdy. He opened it and found several folded papers inside. They were maps marked with locations in the forest. Some places were marked with symbols he recognized from the stones. Others were unknown. Tom realized that these maps could guide him to other hidden locations in the forest. Excited, he studied the maps carefully. One location was very close to where he stood. He decided to follow it. As he walked, he felt a sense of purpose. He was uncovering a secret that had been hidden for many years. The forest was full of mysteries, and he was beginning to understand them. Tom reached a small hill marked on the map. At the top, he found another stone with symbols. This one was different from the others. It was larger, and the carvings were deeper and more detailed. Tom examined them carefully. They told a story, but it was not easy to understand. He made detailed sketches and notes in his notebook. As he studied the stone, he noticed something unusual. A small metal plate was attached to the base. It had letters engraved on it. "Follow the light to find the truth." Tom's heart raced. This was a clue, a direct message for anyone brave enough to explore. He looked around, and in the distance he saw faint glimmers of light. They were similar to the lights he had noticed earlier. Tom realized that the message on the metal plate was a guide. He had to follow the lights. With determination, he followed the glowing points through the forest. The path was narrow and sometimes difficult to navigate, but he kept moving forward. The lights led him to another small clearing. Here he found a circle of stones arranged in a pattern. The center of the circle was empty, but the arrangement reminded him of diagrams in the notebooks. Tom carefully examined the stones. Each one had small symbols carved into it, and some had tiny grooves. He realized that the circle might be a map or a code, left to be discovered by someone who could understand the symbols. He took pictures and notes, knowing that this information would be important later. As the sun began to set, Tom decided it was time to head back. He carefully retraced his steps, following the trail back to the police car. He felt a mix of excitement and satisfaction. He had found more clues and discovered a deeper layer of the forest mystery. Back at the car, he placed all the new items carefully in his backpack. He felt that the police car was more than just an abandoned vehicle. It was a starting point, a guide for someone curious and brave. Tom locked the doors and marked the location on his phone. Walking back through the forest as the sky turned orange and pink, Tom thought about what he had discovered. The maps, the stones, the symbols, and the lights were all part of a larger story. He knew he was only beginning to understand it, but he felt certain that he was on the right path. That night back at home, Tom spread out everything he had found. He studied the maps, examined the photos, and made careful notes in his notebook. He realized that he would need to return to the forest multiple times to follow all the clues. Each location held a piece of the mystery, and he was determined to find them all. As he went to bed, Tom felt a sense of anticipation. The forest had secrets, and he was uncovering them one by one. He dreamed of glowing lights, carved stones, and hidden clearings. He knew that the next part of his journey would reveal even more. The mystery of the old police car was only the beginning, and Tom was ready to continue. The following morning, Tom woke up before the sun had even risen. He could feel the excitement in his chest. Yesterday's discoveries had changed everything. The maps, the carved stones, and the strange lights in the forest hinted at a hidden secret that no one had yet understood. Today he would return and follow the maps to see where they led. After a quick breakfast, Tom packed his backpack carefully. He included the notebook, the camera, the flash drive, the key, the small vials, and a few extra tools. He wanted to be ready for anything. As he walked toward the forest, he felt a mixture of curiosity and determination. He knew he was getting closer to discovering something important. The forest was calm in the early morning light. Mist hovered above the ground, making the trees look taller and more mysterious. Tom followed the trail he had used before. He felt like he knew the forest well, but every step brought new surprises. The shadows shifted in unusual ways, and small sounds made him pause. He reminded himself to stay focused. After walking for about an hour, he reached the clearing where the old police car was hidden. The car was covered in leaves and moss as always, but it felt different now. Tom had a sense that the car had been waiting for him to return. He placed his backpack inside and pulled out the maps in the notebook. He studied them carefully. One map showed a location deeper in the forest, marked with a symbol he had seen on the carved stones. Tom realized this was his next destination. The path was narrow and overgrown, but he pushed through the branches and leaves. Every step felt purposeful. He was following a trail left by the officers who had explored this place before him. As he walked, Tom noticed signs he had missed before. Small rocks were arranged in patterns. Moss was disturbed in strange ways, and the ground showed faint footprints. He compared everything to the symbols in the notebooks. Each sign seemed to guide him closer to the hidden location. After some time, Tom reached a small hill marked on the map. At the top, he found another carved stone larger than the others. The symbols on this stone were different. They were arranged in a circle and seemed to tell a story. Tom studied them carefully, making sketches and notes in his notebook. He felt as though the forest was communicating with him. He remembered the metal plate he had found on the previous stone. Perhaps this stone also had a clue. He examined the base and noticed a small indentation. It was shaped like one of the vials he had brought from the police car. Tom carefully placed a vial into the indentation. As soon as the vial touched the stone, a faint glow appeared. Light spread across the symbols, making them clearer. Tom realized that the symbols formed a map, showing the locations of other hidden places in the forest. He felt a thrill of excitement. The officers had left a trail and he was following it. Tom studied the glowing map for several minutes. He saw a path that led to a small clearing near a cluster of large trees. This was his next destination. He packed his tools carefully and began walking. The forest grew darker as he moved deeper, but the trail was clear thanks to the symbols and the small lights he had seen before. As he walked, he noticed unusual shapes in the trees. Branches bent in patterns that looked like letters or symbols. Small stones formed arrows pointing in certain directions. Tom followed them carefully, feeling more confident with each step. The forest was guiding him and he trusted the trail. After a while, he reached the clearing marked on the map. In the center, there was a large tree with a hollow trunk. The hollow was just big enough for Tom to reach inside. He looked carefully and saw a small wooden box. His heart raced. Could this be another clue left by the officers? Tom reached inside and pulled out the box. It was light but well crafted. Inside he found several objects, a small lantern, a folded map, and a journal. The journal was older than the notebooks he had found before. Its pages were yellowed and the handwriting was elegant and careful. Tom opened it and began to read. The journal belonged to an officer named Henry. He wrote about the forest in great detail. He described how certain areas were unusual, how lights appeared at night, and how symbols seemed to guide people. Henry mentioned that he and other officers had discovered hidden places where the forest held secrets that were not obvious to ordinary visitors. Tom read carefully. Henry wrote that the forest had been used by people long ago for important purposes. They had created the carved stones, the circles of rocks, and the markings on trees to communicate and guide others. Over time, the forest had hidden these signs, leaving them for those who were curious and brave. Tom felt a sense of wonder. He realized that he was part of a long chain of explorers. The officers had left clues, and now he was following them. The forest was not just a place of trees and streams. It was a place of history, mystery, and knowledge waiting to be discovered. He looked at the folded map in the box. It showed additional locations deeper in the forest. Some had symbols he had seen before, others were new. Tom knew he would need several days to visit them all. Each location promised new discoveries and new pieces of the story. As he studied the map, he noticed small notes in the margins. They mentioned things like follow the light, look for patterns, and the forest will guide you. Tom felt a thrill. The instructions were simple, but they worked. He had followed them successfully so far, and he knew they would continue to guide him. After a short rest, Tom decided to explore the nearest location on the new map. He packed the items back into his backpack and followed the trail. The path was narrow, overgrown, and sometimes difficult to see, but he moved carefully. Every symbol, every mark, and every light helped him find the way. When he arrived at the next clearing, he found something remarkable. A circle of stones was arranged around a small pool of water. The stones had symbols carved into them, similar to the ones he had seen before. The water was clear and still, reflecting the sunlight in beautiful patterns. Tom felt that this place was very important. He studied the circle carefully. The symbols seemed to tell a story about the forest, its history, and the people who had explored it. He took notes and pictures, recording everything he could. He also used the magnifying glass from the police car to examine small details on the stones. As the day passed, Tom explored more of the area. He discovered additional stones, markings on trees, and small objects hidden among the roots. Each discovery added to the story. He felt as if he were piecing together a puzzle that had been hidden for generations. By late afternoon, Tom realized it was time to return home. He carefully retraced his steps, making sure to remember the path and the locations he had visited. The forest had been generous with its secrets today. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction and anticipation for the next day. Back at home, Tom spread out all the items he had found. The journal, the maps, the stones, and the photographs created a story of the forest that was beginning to make sense. He knew that he had uncovered something extraordinary. But there was still more to discover. As he prepared for bed, Tom thought about the forest, the officers who had explored it, and the mysterious symbols and lights. He knew that he was following a path that had been left for curious and brave people. The forest held many secrets, and he was determined to uncover all of them. That night he dreamed of glowing lights, carved stones, and the hidden clearings he had discovered. He felt a sense of purpose and excitement. The forest was alive with history, mystery, and knowledge, and he was part of it. He knew that tomorrow would bring new discoveries, new clues, and new surprises. The next morning, Tom woke up with excitement. He knew today would be important. The maps, journals, and clues from the old police car had brought him far into the forest's secrets. Today, he planned to reach the final location marked on the maps. He packed his backpack carefully. The notebook, camera, flashlight, key, vials, and magnifying glass were all ready. He felt prepared for whatever he might discover. The forest was quiet as Tom walked along the familiar path. Sunlight filtered through the trees, creating beautiful patterns on the ground. Birds chirped cheerfully, and the air was fresh with the scent of pine and soil. Tom felt a mix of calm and anticipation. Every step brought him closer to the end of his adventure. After an hour, he reached the clearing with the old police car. The car, covered in moss and leaves, seemed to greet him silently. Tom unlocked the driver's door, placed his bag inside, and reviewed the maps once more. The final location was deep in the forest, past areas he had explored before. The map indicated a hill surrounded by large trees, with a symbol similar to those on the carved stones. Tom set off, following the trail of symbols, markings on trees, and small glimmers of light he had noticed on previous days. The forest grew denser and the path was narrower. He pushed aside branches carefully, stepping over fallen logs and avoiding low-hanging vines. The air was cooler here, and the shadows of trees stretched across the ground. As he walked, Tom noticed unusual sounds. Leaves rustled, branches cracked, and a faint humming seemed to fill the air. He paused several times to listen. The sounds were not frightening, but they reminded him that this part of the forest was less explored. Every movement seemed significant, and he felt the forest itself was guiding him. After a while, he reached a narrow path he had not seen before. The path led to a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. In the center of the clearing was a large rock formation. Symbols similar to those on the other stones were carved into the rocks. Tom's heart raced. This had to be the final location marked on the map. He approached the rocks carefully. The carvings formed patterns, some of which matched the symbols in the journals and notebooks. He realized that the rocks told a story. The story was about the forest, the officers who had explored it, and the hidden knowledge they had discovered. Tom felt a deep sense of wonder. He studied the carvings carefully. One rock had a small hollow at its base. Tom looked inside and found a small box made of polished wood. It was light but felt sturdy. He opened it slowly. Inside there were several items: a folded map, a journal, and a small crystal that seemed to glow faintly. Tom's eyes widened. The journal belonged to an officer named Sarah. She had written detailed accounts of her explorations in the forest. She described how the forest had been used long ago by people who wanted to protect knowledge. They had created the symbols, the carved stones, and the hidden locations to guide others. Sarah wrote that those who followed the signs with care would discover the forest's greatest secret. Tom unfolded the map. It showed several locations he had already visited, and a final spot in the center of the forest marked with a large symbol. The symbol looked like a circle with smaller circles around it. Tom realized this was the ultimate location, where the forest's secret had been preserved. He packed the items carefully and followed the map's directions. The path was narrow and winding. Small streams crossed his way, and roots stretched across the ground. The forest seemed alive, almost as if it were watching him. He felt a mixture of excitement and respect. He knew he was close to uncovering something remarkable. After some time, he reached a hill surrounded by tall, ancient trees. At the top, he found a circular arrangement of stones, much larger than the previous ones. The center of the circle had a shallow depression, and the symbols carved into the stones glowed faintly in the sunlight. Tom realized this was the final location. He stepped into the circle carefully, examining every detail. The carvings told a story about harmony, nature, and knowledge. Tom noticed that some symbols matched those in the journals he had read. Others were new, representing ideas about exploration, observation, and understanding. He felt as though he was reading the language of the forest itself. In the center of the circle, he placed the small crystal from Sarah's box. Immediately, a soft light spread across the stones. The carvings became brighter, and patterns emerged that had not been visible before. Tom watched in awe as the symbols formed a map of the entire forest, showing paths, hidden clearings, and locations of the carved stones he had discovered. He realized that the forest had been carefully designed to guide those who were curious and patient. The officers had discovered these patterns, left clues, and preserved the knowledge for future explorers. Tom felt a deep sense of connection to those who had come before him. As he studied the final map, he noticed small compartments hidden among the rocks. Inside, he found more items: small tools, notes, and additional crystals. Each item had a purpose, guiding explorers to understand the forest and its secrets. Tom understood that this place had been protected for many years, waiting for someone who was observant and respectful. He spent several hours examining the circle and the items. Every discovery added to his understanding. The forest was not just a collection of trees and streams. It was a living archive of knowledge, carefully preserved and hidden from casual visitors. Tom felt honored to be part of this discovery. As the sun began to set, Tom knew it was time to leave. He carefully packed the items he had found and made sure to leave everything organized for others who might follow the signs in the future. He marked the location in his notebook and took photographs of the circle and carvings. He wanted to remember every detail and share the story safely. The walk back through the forest felt different. Tom saw the trees, streams, and stones in a new light. He noticed the patterns in the forest more clearly and felt a sense of harmony with his surroundings. The forest had shared its secrets with him, and he had learned to observe carefully and respect the hidden knowledge. When he reached the clearing with the old police car, the sun had almost disappeared. Tom placed the items he had carried carefully inside the car, locking the doors afterward. The car had been his guide, his starting point, and now it seemed almost like a friend waiting silently among the trees. Back at home, Tom spread out everything he had found over his desk. The journals, maps, photographs, and small items created a complete story of the forest's hidden knowledge. He realized that he had followed the trail left by officers for many years, discovering the forest's secrets one by one. He wrote down everything he had learned, organizing the information clearly. The story of the old police car, the carved stones, the hidden clearings, and the glowing lights became a map of the forest's history. Tom felt proud of his careful observations and patience. He had discovered something extraordinary, and he had preserved it for the future. That night, Tom went to bed with a sense of fulfillment. The forest had shared its secrets, and he had understood its story. He dreamed of glowing lights, carved symbols, hidden clearings, and the officers who had explored the forest before him. He knew that the adventure had changed him. From that day forward, Tom visited the forest often, studying the patterns, helping preserve the stones and items, and learning more about the history and secrets hidden within the trees. The old police car remained in the clearing, a silent guardian of the knowledge he had discovered. Tom knew that the forest's mysteries were vast, but he had unlocked a story that had been waiting for him for many years. The forest was no longer just a place to hike. It was a place of wonder, discovery, and respect. Tom had found the old police car, followed the clues, and uncovered the hidden secrets. What he found inside the car and in the forest changed everything. It taught him patience, observation, and the importance of curiosity. And from that day on, whenever he walked among the trees, Tom could feel the presence of the explorers who had come before him. The forest, the car, and the hidden stones had shared their story, and he had become part of it. The adventure had ended, but the knowledge, wonder, and magic of the forest would stay with him forever.